Good evening, everybody. Myself, Kanchan Sinha from Sri Shankaracharya Mahavidyalaya, Junwani, Bhilai. Today, I am going to discuss about test, measurement, assessment, and evaluation. First of all, we will discuss about test and measurement. Test and data. Test, an instrument or activity used to accumulate data on a person's ability to perform a specific task. Data is the translation of behavior into a numerical or verbal descriptor which is then recorded in written form. Measurement takes place when a test is given and a score is obtained. If the test collects quantitative data, the score is a number. If the test collects qualitative data, the score may be phrase or words such as excellent. Now, why to administer test? To measure individual difference on a specific trait or behavior, and discussion is a test good if anyone scores 100%, or is a test good if anyone scores 0%. The concept of test is to determine a student's ability to complete certain tasks or demonstrate mastery of a skill or knowledge of content. Measures the level of skill or knowledge that has been reached. Test may be called as tool, a question, set of question, an examination which is used to measure a particular characteristics of an or a group of individual. Test is a form of questioning or measuring tool used to assess the status of one's skill, attitude, and fitness. Test is an instrument or activity used to accumulate data on a person's ability to perform a specific task. It is an assessment intended to measure a test taker's knowledge, skill, aptitude, performance, or classification in many other topics. Measurement is a process of collecting data on attribute or interest. It is an act or process that involves the assignment of numerical values to whatever is being tested. So it involves the quantity of something. Measurement is then used to describe the assignment of a number to a given assessment. The number can be a raw score or a score based on a normal distribution curve. The process of quantifying this number is separate from using this information to evaluate students' outcome and achievement. Kinds of tests. There are different kinds of tests such as objective, subjective, individual, group, unstandardized, and standardized test. Objective test, it is a test of paper and pencil test where in student answer can be compared and quantified to yield a numerical score. This is because it requires convergent and specific response. Subjective test is a paper and pencil test which is not easily quantified as students are given the freedom to write their answer to a question such as an essay test. Thus, the answer of this type of test is divergent. Individual test is a test administered to one student at a time, whereas group test is a test which is administered to a group of students. Unstandardized test, it is one prepared by teacher for use in the classroom with no established norms for scoring and interpretation of the result. Whereas standardized test is a test prepared by an expert or specialist. This type of test samples behavior under uniform procedure. Need of the test. This test result utilized for various purposes such as assessment of the present status of an individual on a particular trait or variable, expressing the probability of future success, diagnosis the cause of lack of expected performance and suggesting remedial measures, providing academic and vocational guidance, classifying Classification, comparing and categorizing individual or group individuals. Undertaking research to answer various questions. These are the needs of the test. Characteristics of the test. A good test should have valid, reliable, practical, comprehensive, relevant, balanced, appropriate in difficulty, clear, authentic, appropriate for time, objective and economic. Purpose of tests and measurements are for getting knowledge about the progress, for preparation of effective planning, for knowing the abilities and capacities, for giving motivations, for knowing the achievement in future, and for research and experimentation. The uses of tests are for motivation, for achievement, for improvement, for diagnosis, for prescriptions, for grading, for classification, and for prediction. Administrative concern in the test selections are relevance, educational value, economic value, time, norms, bias, and safety. Now come to the measurement. Measurement takes place when a test is given and a score is obtained. Collection or gathering of data. Data is information represented in the form of numerical value. For example, students score in an examination physical properties of objects such as length and mass. Nature of measurement. It should be quantitative in nature. It must be precise and accurate. It must be reliable. It must be valid. And it must be objective in nature. Characteristics of measurement. It should be quantitative, easy to understand, encourage appropriate behavior, visible, defined and mutually understood, encompasses both inputs and outputs, measures only what is important, multidimensional, uses economics of effort, and facilitates trust. Scope of measurement. There are three main functions: prognosis functions, diagnosis functions, and research functions. Prognosis function tells difference among people's performance. Has the administrative functions such as classification, selection, promotion, and gradation of student. Guidance and counseling services based on prognosis function of measurement. Effectiveness of method, instructions, and treatment are evaluated on the basis of students' achievement. Diagnosis function. It identifies the weakness of the student learning. Remedial instructions prepared on the basis of diagnosis. Establish the cause-effect relationship, but prediction implies the simple relationship. Research function. It is the verification of scientific hypothesis of research. It is used for research purposes, complete valid measure of certain human characteristics, and provide objective and dependable basis for comparison. Measurement scales. There are four types of measurement scale, that is nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and ratio scale. Subjective versus objective measurement. A subjective measurement is one that can be be interpreted differently, whereas an objective measurement is one that cannot be interpreted differently because of numerical values. Consideration when taking measurement. Remember that you are measuring a characteristics of the person. You are not measuring the person themselves. Thus, make no judgment about the person. Make no comical remarks regarding the collected data. Have a high ethical standards when collecting the data and be professional. Measurement process involve 4 steps. First of all, that it define the characteristics that you want to measure. Select the appropriate test. This may also mean to select the appropriate testing instrument. Administer the test. If an instrument is involved in the testing, This also means to use the instrument correctly. Collect and record the measurement from the test. Now we will discuss about the assessment. Assessment attempts to measure learning. It is formative or summative, ideally linked to outcome. Graded and non-graded instruments are used. Now in detail. What is assessment? Assessment is a process of documenting, usually in measurable terms, knowledge, skills, attitude, and belief. Assessment in education is the process of gathering, interpreting, recording, and using information about pupils' response to an educational task. Assessment can focus on the individual learner, the learning community, that is class, workshop, or other organized group of learners, the institution, or the educational system. The process of gathering quantitative and qualitative data of what a student can do and how much a student possesses. Assessment is a process of collecting information, evidence through measurement, interpret, describe, and interpret the evidence of measurement, as said by Parmendibukut in 2014. According to Sargar Dan Nara 2010, assessment is a process for making decisions using information obtained through measurement. For example, 100 items to 80 items answered it correctly by Ahmad. Thus, it can be determined that Ahmad including smart kid. Assessment is qualitative. Now, types of assessment. There are 4 types of assessment: formal, informal, formative, and summative assessment. Formal assessment is having data which support the conclusions made for the test. We usually refer to this type of test as standardized measure. The data is mathematically computed and summarized. Scores such as percentiles, stenines, or standard scores are mostly commonly given from this type of assessment. Informal assessment are not data driven but rather content and performance driven. For example, running record are informal assessment because they indicate how well a student is reading a specific book. Scores such as 10 correct out of 50% of words read correctly, and most rubric scores are given from this type of assessment. Formative assessment, a diagnostic use of assessment to provide feedback to teacher and student over the course of instruction, as said by Carol Boston. Gathering of data during a time program is being developed. This is likewise provide feedback for the improvement of an instructions or for the improvement of the program. It determines whether the teacher delivers quality instruction in a particular day based on a particular result. Summative assessment is one attempt to assess student learning for a specific time period. For example, a unit test would be a summative assessment used to determine the mastery and achievement of the student, done usually at the end of a chapter or a unit. Accountability of success or failure, used primarily in assigning grades, designed to determine the extent to which the instructional objective has been achieved. The goal of summative assessment is to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. Purpose of assessment: to diagnose student strength and weakness, to assign grades, to determine the teacher effectiveness, to monitor students' progress, to help evaluate teachers, determine how well and to what extent program and service children receives are being beneficial and appropriate. Nature of assessment. There are two types of assessment on the basis of nature. Maximum performance, number one, and number two, typical performance. Maximum performance determines what individual can do when performing at their best. It includes aptitude tests and achievement tests. Typical performance determines what individual will do under natural conditions. It includes personality, interest, observational techniques. Forms of assessment. There are two forms of assessment. Number one, fixed choice test, and number two, complex performance assessment. Fixed choice test is efficient measurement of knowledge and skill. It is an indirect indicator and standardized multiple choice test. Complex performance assessment, measurement of performance in contest and on problem values in their own right. Project essays and oral presentation. Assessment of learning. The purpose of this kind of assessment is usually summative and is mostly done at the end of a task, unit or work, etc. It is designed to provide evidence of achievement to parents, other educators, the student themselves, and sometimes to outside groups. Assessment of learning is the assessment that becomes public and result in statement or symbols about how well students are learning. It often contributes to pivotal decisions that will affect students' future. It is important and that the underlying logic and measurement of assessment of learning be credible and defensible. Teachers' role in assessment of learning. Teachers have the responsibility of reporting student learning accurately and fairly based on evidence obtained from a variety of contexts and applications. Effective assessment of learning requires that teachers provide a rationale for undertaking a particular assessment of learning at a particular point in time. Clear description of the intending learning and process that makes it possible for students to demonstrate their competence and skill. Assessment for learning. The emphasis shifts from summative to formative assessment in assessment for learning. Assessment for learning happens during the learning, often more than once rather than at the end. Students understand exactly what they are to learn, what is expected to them, and are given feedback and advice on how to improve the work. Teachers' role in assessment for learning. Assessment for learning occurs throughout the learning process. It is interactive with teachers, aligning instructions, identifying particular learning needs of students or groups, selecting and adapting material and resources, creating differentiated teaching strategies and learning opportunities for helping individual students move forward in their learning, providing immediate feedback and direction to students. Principle of assessment. Assessment should be well aligned with student objective, competence and educational standard. The formative assessment needs to scaffold students in the summative assessment. Assessment should become more like instructions. Assessment results need to be used by teachers to help students learn better. Assessment is not used to threaten and intimidate and intimate student. The teacher should encourage the learning community to engage in assessment. Assessment is a technical competency by using assessment to make decision about the instruction. Function of assessment. Regulation Ministry of Education and Cultural Republic of Indonesia number 104 year 2014. Formative function is to correcting deficiency of students' learning outcome in their attitude, knowledge and skills at every assessment during the learning process of one semester. Summative functions which determine the success of learner at the end of semester, 1 year of learning, or the future of education in the educational unit. Based on Suhashimo Arikunto's function of assessment are selective function, diagnostic function, placement function, and measuring success function. Now we will discuss about evaluation. Evaluation is making judgment about ability, skill, performance, potential based on criteria and evidences. Evaluation attempt to measure teacher performance may be influenced by students' perception and essentially feedback to help the growth of the teacher. Now, what is evaluation in detail? Evaluation is concerned with a whole range of issues in and beyond education. Lessons, programs, and skills can be evaluated. It produces a global view of achievements, usually based on many different types of informations, such as observation of lesson, test score, assessment report, course documents, or interview with student and teacher. The process of making overall judgment about one's work or a whole school work is evaluation as said by Cameron. Ralph Taylor says evaluation is a process of determining to what extent the educational objectives are being realized. According to Parmendi Book 2014, evaluation is a process of taking decision based on assessment result. According to Suhasini Arikunto 2004, evaluation is an activity to gather information about the working of something which then the information is used to determine an appropriate alternative in making decision. Now, types of evaluation. There are two types of evaluation. First is process evaluation and second is product evaluation. Process evaluation refers to evaluation taking place during the program or learning activity. It is conducted while the event to be evaluated is occurring and focuses on identifying the progress toward purposes, objectives, or outcomes to improve the activities, courses, curriculum, program, or teaching and student. It is also known as formative evaluation. Product evaluation examines the effect of outcome of some object. It conducted at the end of course. It is also known as summative evaluation. It evaluates the progress towards an established outcome. Another type of evaluation is student evaluation, curriculum evaluation, school evaluation, project evaluation, program evaluation, and staff evaluation. Purposes of evaluations are to clarify and define objective, to facilitate the improvement program, motivate participants, establish and maintain standards to meet legal, professional, and academic credentials, test the efficiency of teacher. Goals and objectives of evaluation are: goals are general statement of purpose or desired outcome and are not as such directly measurable. Each goal must be translated into one or more specific objective. Objective are specific statement of what is to be accomplished and how well, and are expressed in terms of quantifiable, measurable outcomes. Objectives give direction to all subsequent activities. Phases of evaluation. There are three phases. Phase 1, understanding your program. Phase 2, planning your evaluation. And phase 3, implementing your evaluation. Norms of evaluations are: sometimes that is usual, typical, or standard. A standard or pattern, especially of social behavior, that is typical or expected of a group. the norms of good behavior in the civil services. Process of evaluation include three-part: planning, implementation, and feedback. These three parts include 9 steps. Step 1, define purpose and scope. Step 2, specify evaluation question. Step 3, specify evaluation design. And step 4, create data collection action plan. These all 4 steps comes under planning. Under implementation, step 5, data collection. Step 6, data analysis. And step 7, finding data interference. And under feedback, step 8, disseminate information. And step 9, feedback for improvement. Relationship between measurement, assessment, and evaluation. Evaluation is a decision-making process based on the assessment result, which describe and interpret measurement result based on the criteria or a predefined size. The test is a procedure used in the measurement and assessment of the framework. As you can see in the diagram, these 4 things: test, measurement, assessment, and evaluation are interconnected. Without one, second can't happen, and without second, third can't be done, and without third, fourth can't be done. So first thing we have to do is the test to measure skill or knowledge. After doing test, we can do measurement, that is, we have to get data in numerical value. And when we get the data in numerical value, we can do assessment by documentation. And finally, after assessing, we can evaluate measure the teaching learning process. The data given in the slides are taken from these sites.